Most people get over their exes by blocking them. Ava Gardner? She turned them into wall art. Rumor has it, if you broke her heart, your face ended up in her personal hall of shame, sometimes with a few artistic modifications. Hollywood's untamed star. Ava Gardner never fit the Hollywood mold. She was too wild, too outspoken, and too unwilling to play by the rules. That only made people want her more. Born in 1922 in a small North Carolina town, Ava had no family connections to the film industry. She wasn't raised for stardom, and she had no big dreams of acting. But one lucky moment changed everything. At 18, a single photo taken by her brother-in-law landed in a New York studio window. An MGM scout spotted it and was immediately hooked. Without even hearing her speak, they offered her a contract. That was all it took, one picture, and suddenly she was on a train to Hollywood. MGM had no idea what to do with her at first. She was stunning, but she had a thick Southern accent and no acting experience. They put her through endless speech lessons and minor background roles. She spent years in thankless parts, standing silently behind the real stars. But Ava refused to fade into the background. She had something no studio could teach: presence. Even in small roles, people noticed her. And when she finally landed a leading part in The Killers, 1946, everything changed. The film was a hit, and so was she. Overnight, she became one of Hollywood's most sought-after stars. Fame didn't make her any more obedient. She drank, swore, and lived on her own terms. Studio heads tried to control her, but she never let them. She partied with the biggest names in Hollywood, dodged the press when she felt like it, and ignored every rule made for women in the industry. She also had one of the most scandalous love lives in Hollywood history. Powerful men chased her, fell for her, and sometimes broke her heart. But Ava wasn't the type to cry over a man. And when she was done with them, she made sure they weren't forgotten. Mickey Rooney's betrayal. Her first mistake in love was marrying too young and marrying Mickey Rooney. In 1942, at just 19 years old, Ava became Mrs. Rooney, tying the knot with one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Mickey was a box office king famous for his charm, quick wit, and endless energy. MGM loved him, fans adored him. But behind closed doors, he was a disaster as a husband. Ava was young, naive, and in love. At first, she believed in the fairy tale. Mickey showered her with attention, whisking her into his world of fame, fortune, and fast living. But it didn't take long for her to see the truth. Mickey had no intention of being faithful. He was a serial womanizer, constantly cheating while acting like nothing was wrong. He bragged about his conquests, flirted shamelessly in front of Ava, and treated his marriage like an afterthought. Everyone in Hollywood knew it, except Ava, until it was too late. When she found out, she was devastated. But she wasn't weak. She confronted him, furious at the betrayal. Mickey, of course, had excuses. He was young. He was famous. Women threw themselves at him. Ava wasn't interested in excuses. She wanted respect, and she wasn't getting it. MGM tried to keep their golden boy's reputation clean. Divorce wasn't a good look for a Hollywood star. They pressured Ava to stay, tried to smooth things over. But she wasn't the type to pretend everything was fine just to please the studio. After just 1 year of marriage, she left him. Mickey begged her to stay, promised to change, but Ava was done. Later in life, she made it clear she had no regrets about walking away. And Mickey? He went on to marry 7 more times. Maybe Ava saw it coming before anyone else. Maybe that's why his face ended up on her wall. Artie Shaw's control. Her second marriage should have been different. Artie Shaw wasn't a Hollywood playboy. He was a jazz legend, a genius with a clarinet, and one of the most respected musicians of his time. He was older, more cultured, and on the surface, seemed like a man who could handle someone like Ava. But there was a problem. He didn't respect her. Ava met Artie in 1945 after her divorce from Mickey Rooney. He was charming, sophisticated, and had a reputation for being an intellectual, a man who loved books, philosophy, and deep conversation. Ava, a girl from rural North Carolina with no formal education, felt out of place in his world, and Artie made sure she knew it. He treated Ava like a student, not a wife. He corrected her speech, criticized her reading choices, and made condescending remarks about her background. Instead of embracing who she was, he tried to fix her. Ava was smart. She just wasn't the type of smart Artie wanted. She had wit, street smarts, and a quick mind, but he wanted someone who spoke like a scholar, someone he could show off. Instead of feeling loved, Ava felt like a project. The marriage didn't last long. Ava hated feeling inferior, and Artie didn't know how to stop making her feel that way. Less than a year after saying "I do," she walked out. Years later, she admitted that being with him made her feel small and unworthy, and she hated that feeling more than anything. Artie, for his part, went on to marry 8 times, proving that maybe the problem wasn't Ava, it was him. Did Artie end up on the revenge wall? It wouldn't be surprising. After all, he left her with something worse than heartbreak: self-doubt. And if there was one thing Ava couldn't stand, it was a man who tried to make her feel less than she was. Howard Hughes' obsession. She had dealt with cheaters and control freaks, but Howard Hughes was something else entirely, a man who simply refused to take no for an answer. By the time Ava met Hughes in the 1940s, he was already a Hollywood legend, a billionaire, and one of the most powerful men in America. He was known for his genius, his daring aviation feats, and his growing eccentricity. He was also known for his obsessive pursuit of beautiful women, and Ava was one of them. Hughes lavished her with gifts, expensive jewelry, custom-made dresses, even offers to buy her anything she wanted. But Ava wasn't impressed by money. She had her own, and she didn't like men who thought they could buy her affection. At first, she tolerated his advances, maybe even found them flattering. But Hughes didn't know when to stop. He followed her, sent people to watch over her, and inserted himself into her life, whether she wanted him there or not. It didn't help that he was powerful enough to get away with it. Hughes had spies everywhere. He could track where she was, who she was with, and what she was doing. At times, it felt less like courtship and more like surveillance. Ava was independent, fiery, and no man, not even one of the richest men in the world, was going to control her. She made it clear she wasn't interested. But Hughes? He never really gave up. Even after she moved on, he still hovered in the background of her life. Some say he kept tabs on her for years, never truly accepting that she had rejected him. Did he make the revenge wall? Maybe. Or maybe Ava just found him too pathetic to bother. One thing's for sure, Howard Hughes may have owned airlines, movie studios, and millions of dollars, but he never owned Ava Gardner. Frank Sinatra's chaos. Of all the men in Ava Gardner's life, Frank Sinatra was the one who left the deepest mark. He wasn't just another fling, another name on a list. He was the love of her life. But their relationship wasn't a fairy tale. It was passionate, messy, and destructive. They met in the late 1940s when Sinatra's career was on the decline. He had once been America's most beloved crooner, but by the time Ava came into his life, his star was fading. His marriage to Nancy Sinatra was crumbling, and he was desperate for a comeback. Then came Ava. Their chemistry was immediate, undeniable, and impossible to control. But there was one problem. Frank was still married. Their affair was a Hollywood scandal. The press painted Ava as a homewrecker, blaming her for Sinatra leaving his wife. The Catholic Church turned against him. Studios blacklisted him. His career hit rock bottom, and Ava took the heat for all of it, but she didn't care. She loved him. When they finally married in 1951, they were the most talked about couple in Hollywood. Their love was wild. They drank, fought, made up, and tore each other apart. One night, they'd be passionately in love. The next, they'd be throwing things and screaming at each other in public. Sinatra was jealous. Ava was independent. He wanted a devoted wife. She wanted freedom. It was never going to last. By 1957, they were divorced. But unlike her other exes, Sinatra never really left her life. Even after they split, he adored her. He called her late at night. He sent her gifts. He wrote her letters. Ava, for her part, never stopped loving him either, but she also knew they were too toxic to ever work. Did Frank make the revenge wall? Unlikely. Their relationship may have been a storm, but it wasn't built on betrayal. If anything, he was the one man Ava never truly got over. Lovers beyond Hollywood. Hollywood men weren't the only ones drawn to Ava Gardner. She was a magnet for power, danger, and adventure. When she left the studio system behind, she didn't just leave behind movie sets, she left behind Hollywood's rules, and that included who she dated. By the late 1950s, Ava was spending less time in Los Angeles and more time in Spain. She had always been drawn to excitement, and nothing was more thrilling than the world of bullfighting. The sport was brutal, dangerous, and deeply masculine, exactly the kind of world that fascinated her. That's where she met Luis Miguel Dominguín, Spain's most famous matador. He was bold, confident, and fearless in the ring, but outside of it, he was just as reckless in love. Their affair was fast, fiery, and intense, filled with passion and competition. Dominguín loved bragging about his conquests, and sleeping with Ava Gardner was a trophy to him. One morning, after spending the night together, he immediately left to tell his friends. Ava, furious, ended things just as quickly as they started. But he wasn't her only Spanish romance. There were whispers of flings with other matadors, European royals, and even political figures. Ava had no interest in settling down. She was finally free from Hollywood's grip, and she wasn't about to let any man claim her. She also spent time in London, where she lived in the later years of her life. Though she never married again, she kept company with powerful, wealthy men who adored her. Some wanted to tame her. None succeeded. Unlike her Hollywood exes, these men weren't as likely to make the revenge wall. They weren't cheaters like Mickey Rooney, or controlling like Artie Shaw. Many of them were simply flings, affairs, and passing lovers. Birth of the Wall. Ava Gardner didn't dwell on heartbreak. She turned it into entertainment. Somewhere along the way, that attitude evolved into something legendary, her so-called revenge wall. The exact origins are unclear. Some say it started after her divorce from Frank Sinatra, when she was at her most cynical about love. Others believe it was just a joke, a private gallery of men who let her down. Either way, by the late 1950s, Hollywood insiders were whispering about it. So what was it exactly? A collection of ex-lovers' photos pinned to a wall in her home, but they weren't left untouched. Ava got creative. Some pictures had mustaches drawn on them, devil horns, blacked-out teeth, and crude little insults. Others had notes scribbled in the margins. Bore, cheater, liar. Some men were completely defaced. Others were left intact, almost like trophies. But was it bitterness or humor? People who saw it had mixed reactions. Some thought it was hilarious, a perfect example of Ava's wicked wit. Others thought it was petty, even a little dark. After all, Hollywood men discarded women all the time. Ava just made sure they weren't forgotten. It wasn't just ex-husbands either. Flings, short-lived lovers, and even powerful Hollywood figures were rumored to be on the wall. If a man treated her poorly, broke her heart, or made a fool of himself, he risked being pinned up for Ava's private amusement. Did the men know? Probably not. Hollywood's elite circles were small, and whispers about the wall spread quickly, but no one dared to ask her about it. If a man confronted Ava, she'd probably just laugh, light a cigarette, and change the subject. Some believed the wall was a myth, an exaggerated Hollywood rumor. Others swore it was real. But whether fact or fiction, one thing was certain. No man walked away from Ava Gardner without a reminder of where he stood. And if you ended up on that wall, you were never getting off. Hollywood's shocked reaction. The revenge wall wasn't just Ava Gardner's private joke. It became a Hollywood legend. The second people started whispering about it, the entire industry wanted to know who made the cut. In a town where powerful men got away with everything, Ava did something no one expected. She flipped the script. For decades, actresses had been discarded and forgotten by their famous lovers. Ava made sure her exes weren't forgotten. Reactions varied. Some people thought it was hilarious. Ava's friends, especially the women in Hollywood, admired her for it. They had spent their careers dealing with men who used and abandoned them. The idea of a woman keeping score even in a playful way felt like justice. But not everyone was amused. Some men in Hollywood were furious. Nobody wanted to be publicly mocked by one of the most famous women in the world. Even if the wall was private, the rumors were public. The biggest fear? That a man would find out he was on it. Ava's lovers weren't just actors. They were directors, producers, and Hollywood power players. Some of them could make or break careers. If they saw their own face pinned to that wall, what would they do? For some, the answer was simple: nothing. Ava Gardner was too powerful to be controlled. She didn't need Hollywood anymore. By the time the revenge wall became a known secret, she had already pulled away from the industry. She was living in Spain, making movies on her own terms. If a man confronted her, she wouldn't apologize. She'd probably pour herself another drink and tell him he earned it. Still, the wall had limits. Not every ex made it. Some men were just flings, barely worth remembering. Others, like Sinatra, were too complicated. The wall wasn't just about anger, it was about amusement. Did the wall last? Ava Gardner never kept anything she didn't need. That included men, regrets, and maybe even the revenge wall. By the 1960s, Hollywood had changed, and so had Ava. She was done with the studio system, done with playing by anyone's rules. She left behind the glitz of Los Angeles for Spain, then London, where she lived on her own terms, away from Hollywood's spotlight. But what about the wall? Did it survive the years, or did she finally take it down? No one knows for sure. Some say she kept adding new faces when needed, a growing gallery of mistakes. Others believe that as she got older, she let it go, her grudges fading along with Hollywood's golden age. Ava never confirmed or denied it. She didn't dwell on the past. By the time she was in her 50s, many of the men who had wronged her were either old news or had made fools of themselves without her help. Mickey Rooney had cycled through multiple marriages. Artie Shaw had gone through even more wives. Sinatra had moved on but never really let her go. Maybe she didn't need the wall anymore, or maybe, like her, it had just become part of Hollywood's mythology. One thing is certain, Ava never played the role of the bitter ex. If she did keep the wall, it wasn't about heartbreak. It was about humor, about making sure men who wronged her never had the last word. If she did get rid of it, it wouldn't have been out of regret. Ava didn't do regret. As she grew older, she lived life the way she always had, fiercely independent, unbothered by expectations. She still drank, still cursed, still told wild stories. She was still Ava. The revenge wall, whether real or exaggerated, never defined her. It was just one more thing that made her unforgettable. Because in the end, Ava Gardner didn't need a wall to remind men of what they lost. She was the kind of woman no man ever forgot. Ava's unstoppable legend. She didn't need Hollywood to make her legendary. She did that all on her own. Long after her career slowed down, long after the rumors faded, her name still carried weight. The revenge wall? It was just a small piece of a much bigger story. Even after her death in 1990, the whispers about the wall never stopped. Did it exist? Did she actually keep photos of her exes, marked up and pinned for display? No one could say for sure. But that was the beauty of it. The mystery only made it more powerful. Whether it was real or not, the idea of it was enough to shake Hollywood. The very thought of a woman turning men into punchlines instead of heartbreaks, that was what made people talk. For decades, men in Hollywood used and discarded women without consequence. Ava Gardner wasn't one of them. She made sure that if you wronged her, you didn't just disappear, you became part of her story. Some saw the wall as petty, others saw it as brilliant. Either way, nobody else had the nerve to do it. But here's the truth, Ava never needed a revenge wall to be remembered. She was already unforgettable. The men she loved, they were famous, but she outshined them all. Mickey Rooney? A joke compared to her. Artie Shaw? Another name in her past. Howard Hughes? Just another man who couldn't have her. Frank Sinatra? Even after their divorce, he never stopped loving her. Ava Gardner wasn't just another starlet. She was the kind of woman who lived freely, loved recklessly, and never let a man define her. And that's why decades later, no one talks about the men who broke her heart. They talk about her. So whether the revenge wall was real or just a legend, one thing is certain. Ava Gardner always had the last laugh.